Hey, all you happy lost souls. How are y'all doing? I want to thank you as the channel continues to grow. I want to thank you all for your support. And if you could, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you're really into it. Um, the channel has a lot of original music. We talk all about neat, fascinating things with archaeology, unknown things, mysterious things. There's a lot of discussion about my artifact collection, dealing with artifacts that seem to date back to 60, 70,000 years ago, found in Pennsylvania. A lot of artifacts made out of corundum or sapphire. Um, just You can check out, there's numerous videos about that. But the video today will be focusing mainly on some ancient groups during the medieval Dark Age periods or the Dark Age periods. Really, there's not a lot of written history because there's some important dates that we got to go over, mainly the fall of the Roman Empire, as it pertains to this story and this theory. The other videos that I've done that kind of that directly tie into this, if you want to check them out, I'm going to put them in the description. I'll put the links up in there. But I have a video of a site right nearby where I live, right, in the outskirts of Philadelphia. Parts of it are in Philadelphia, but the Valley Green area, which is the geological uptick that the Wissahickon Creek flows through as it goes out of the Schuylkill and eventually going back into the Schuylkill. It's like a giant U. It just comes out of the river and then flows back into the river at a way further point downstream. But the fascinating thing is there's this local attraction there called Devil's Pool, and this place is packed in the summer on the weekends. You can't even get a parking spot anywhere near that place. Hundreds and hundreds of people. It's a big party area. If you go in the fall or winter and the weather's not as good during the week, it's empty. You can really explore the area. There's these amazing ancient stones cut into the sides of, along the bank up on the cliff faces. And it's a very spiritual feeling place as you're ascending and descending through this high uptick of cliffs and mountains overlooking the Wissahickon. You turn the corner and there's this enormous, unique geological feature. It's a huge uptick or a cliff face, but it looks like melted granite. And really what it is, it's granite that's been pressed and melted into these banded gneiss formations that look like these accordions of like frozen rock that was once liquid, this crazy metamorphic formation. And it has these long horizontal lines, almost like you would see on sheet music, naturally formed. But someone had gone a long, long time ago with a metal object and struck a series of words using the lines as part of the language. Because what language this is, because I was familiar with it from my studies of anthropology and, in college, and just being very interested in that field, it was some form of Ogham. And, Ogham was used by many groups, and there's different time periods. Proto-Ogham, or Proto-Runic, as Ogham will often contain not just lines and dashes, which that's the main pictography of the actual written language, is a lot of lines and dashes. And they were using the horizontal lines that were naturally in the rock, so they didn't have to strike those. But this particular Ogham had a couple Greek characters in it, and it had a few runes mixed into it, a couple X's and V's, and a B-shaped character, a backwards B-shaped character, mixed in with the lines. And this can help kind of date what type of Ogham it is. Now, what's very difficult is how do you date when someone struck that into the wall. It could have been recent graffiti. Someone could have been making a hoax. Well, there's a field of study called forensic geology. It's a bit controversial, but you can pretty much use the grooves of really old things that we do have the data of, like carvings from old headstones and cemeteries, and you can look at the mineralization and formation and weathering down in those cracks, and you can use the one to compare against the other to get a dating range. But I can just tell you from an experienced eye that the redistribution of silicated and calcified mineral growth within the metamorphic, within these grooves that were struck by somebody, there's moss growing and lichen that have filled in all of it. They're very, very old, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years old. They're done. Now, what gets more interesting, as this is a huge feature, there's a giant, as I call them, ghost trees, or this one's actually a birch tree, and all of its roots come up over top of this. Now, as you bend the corner, there is a natural rock shelter, but somebody has taken and quarried two upright stones, like that you would see on a passage tomb. And they were it probably did have a top piece, like a dolmen or mantle stone going across it. But the sarsen pieces, the upright stones, they were leaned in as like a triangular formation to the entrance of this rock shelter. And in front of it, there was a shaped standing rock and something that looked like a fallen obelisk of some sort right near it. And it's almost identical to all the passage tombs, which is the other video I'm going to link below. The video I'd recently done about all the mysterious passage tombs all up the East Coast. So many of them, rock walls. I recently visited a site out in Westchester, Pennsylvania that had a lot of these characteristics. More stone building, moving, and quarrying done on the pyramids by, I think, 5 times. So all this unknown stuff going on. Now, this Ogham is not like Celtic Ogham. It's not 6th to 9th century because of these other characters that are mixed in, these proto-runes. It's not really late because we don't have the runic language yet, so it's not Viking. The Viking time period was between 800 and 1050 Common Era, or AD. The Roman Empire fell around 476 AD. These are all dates to keep in mind here. The Ogham on that wall, in my research, says it's around 5th to 6th century, maybe even earlier. And it's in association leading up to this passage tomb, very spiritual, and then the next stop on this, what I call a spiritual stone causeway, is Devil's Pool. And you know anything about these ancient religions or these belief systems, what's interesting about this time period is there's not a lot of written history. The Roman Empire just fell. Everything is in chaos as different groups move in to feed off of the carcass of this fallen empire. And one of these areas which was being completely just swallowed up by different invading groups was modern day UK or England. After the Romans fell and there was just no rule or control in England anymore, you had all kinds of groups moving in. So what had happened is a lot of other groups got pushed out, and it is possible in this time period that groups accidentally got just pushed out in desperation, said, screw it, we'll go try to find some new place. And they accidentally landed over here, different groups of them. And these would have been mixed party groups, not just, kind of like pirated bands of groups. Like they would call the Sea People back in, the fall of the Bronze Age. These groups would include like Proto-Welsh, Proto-Germanic groups, Anglos, different Saxon groups, Romans, people from the Mediterranean, anybody that had suffered or gotten pushed out by one of these other invading groups and had access to a boat or ship and got out of Dodge. Romans, even. So one of these groups must have found their way, and maybe a lot more of them did. Maybe the later Viking groups found this area because they knew of other groups before them that had made it over here. You have all these crazy similar passage tombs going all up north, all through, all the way up through New England, through New York, through Connecticut, through there's a lot in Maine. We know that by fact that the Vikings got here in the 1000s, and they wrote a saga about it called the Vinland Saga. And there's an archaeological site called Longsome Meadows in Newfoundland. But the funny thing enough is we never found Vinland, even though the saga was about that, because they were very specific with their naming of a place, and Vinland is Vineland, or places where grapes grow. And grapes didn't grow where Newfoundland is at the time, and they must have made it further south, but maybe they made it a lot further south, because Vikings and a lot of other groups that were not Christian were practicing other spiritual ceremonies and pagan beliefs, and the passage chamber was one of the main things that they buried their very important fallen people with. And they're all over the place up through New York, so maybe the story is true that Vinland is somewhere in the New England region, Massachusetts or New York. And maybe it's very possible that a couple of these groups fell further down. Ogham is extremely hard to date, and it is extremely hard to translate because every clan or every group had their own form of it. It was more like a code. And a lot of these groups, spiritual leaders were druids, and they didn't write anything down. They only, even though they were the collectors of knowledge, that's how they kept it protected, by not writing it. That's one of the interesting things, but their language was Ogham as well, which was struck into trees or stone. More often, later on, the Vikings used rune stones, as more people are familiar with. So that's my main thought on who was making these passage chambers. And the other constructions, well, who knows? I think that Bronze Age groups got here as well, because my overall main broad theory is almost a mission statement of the channel is there's isolationism, which means they think that oceans are boundaries and groups did not use or move across them in the past. And then there's expansionalism, which is the school of thought I'm under. I feel like way more groups had contact with the New World and Old World. There's way more transmissions of ideas and trade than we know. I believe a lot of the archaeology is suppressed. It's called conspiratorial, or it's written off as hoaxes. I go by a lot of circumstantial evidence. I do a lot of research, but they're just opinions in the end. Full disclaimer, I mean, my style is no script. It's off the cuff. Sometimes my dates aren't exactly accurate, but they're close. You all have smartphones and smart devices to do further research. My idea is not to spit out facts to you. You can easily do that on your own. My goal is maybe to give you new ideas or new angles to look up that you never thought of before. But as I tie a lot of this evidence together and seeing this firsthand evidence, as I have physically walked up to these rocks hundreds of times in my life, because my geological labs for college were in that park because of how unique the geology is down there. And a lot of my gemstones come from tributaries found around there. So this area, though, clearly had Ogham struck into this large pronounced cliff face right near the entrance of a passage chamber, right near an area that is still carries this ominous area, even to the Native Americans. It was called Devil's Pool. They didn't even have the word devil in their language. So where do they pick it up from? Somebody that was practicing Christianity. And that's what's interesting. These early groups, some of them were pagan, but carrying Christian ideas. A lot of people would just bandwagon hop whatever God that they prayed to that gave them favor on a certain day. That's the religion they were all of a sudden. So this group probably had mixed beliefs, and it was most likely a group that was formed out of desperation after the fall of the Roman Empire. A lot of people got scattered. People were running for their lives or sailing for their lives, and it's during these times that, out of desperation, that people will, push the bounds of exploration, because it's out of necessity at that point. But this will be very controversial. I'll get a lot of crap in the comments probably, but I'm not sitting here trying to make claims on who discovered what first. There were Native Americans here for thousands and thousands of years, obviously, before those groups that accidentally got here, and they probably encountered Native Americans, and it went one of two ways. And the Native Americans either helped them or they slaughtered them, because they would have been no match for the groups of Native Americans that were here in the strongholds that they held in those areas at the time. It's very possible that because this Ogham is struck at a place where a tributary flows into a larger body of water, that it was some kind of land claim. That is where you would place a land claim at, because you're claiming all the land that this water takes, or a timber claim, because these groups were after different things like wood. The groups here were probably is here out of desperation, and what you're probably looking at is more of a spiritual area or burial site for someone important in their group, for them to have taken the effort of going through that. And because these markings and this Ogham is on a pronounced site so close to this passage chamber, you just got to put two and two together there. So let me know what y'all think, and again, thank you. I know this is kind of a... Oh, I'll throw another thing out there too. There's rumors that a Welsh explorer followed rumors of a previous expedition hundreds of years before him, and his name was Madoc Gwynedd. And Gwynedd apparently got here. This is extremely controversial, as the tribe they say that is Welsh is not Welsh by DNA at all, even though their boats look very similar to the Welsh boats in the Mandan tribe, because they have blonde hair and blue-eyed traits within their tribal groups. Could there have been contact? Possibly. Did he get over here? I think he did. There's a lot of strange things found down in Arkansas. There's a cave with Ogham all over it. It's extremely Mithraic, and it's got all kinds of alignments with the sun, in different petroglyphs that line up with the sun. There was a bull found down there. If you guys watch that series, I don't know if it was Unearthed. I forget what it's called, but that's Walter Scott guy or whatever. A lot of his stuff's extremely controversial. He's a forensic geologist, apparently. I think he covered some of this too. But yeah, some sort of group got over here in the Dark Ages, essentially, after the Roman Empire fell. And let me know what y'all think. The park is a crazy park, though. If you ever go get to check out Valley Green, Edgar Allan Poe even wrote a poem down there. A lot of famous people have walked through there. But anyways, I love y'all. Please subscribe. Please stay safe. And if you're lost, just be happy, because it's in those moments that we find our true selves. Anyway, peace.